morning. I hope everybody's doing well on your first day off from school because of our virus outbreak. I hope you're staying safe. I'm going to attempt to go through some of the information that we've learned this year, starting first with the human body, just because we have a test whenever I see you again, and I want to go through the review sheets with you. I'm going to break it down into small chunks, so if you just want to go through these videos a little bit at a time, going through the review sheets, that would be a great way of trying to review and stay on top of the material that we've already learned. Today I'm going to go over the skeletal and muscular systems. If you haven't done that portion of the review sheet yet, I would encourage you to first take a look at it, do what you can, and then I'm going to go over it with you and go through it, just point out some of the important concepts that we've learned, and then you can watch this video as many times as you need to make sure that you understand the concepts and the content. And if any of you have any questions, feel free to email me anytime. I'm going to try and keep this up regularly, once or twice a week, maybe 3 times, who knows. Maybe I'll just teach the entire class this way, but anyways. So I'm going to look at the skeletal system and muscular system on the review sheet that I sent home. It's this page that's got a lot of concepts in it. It's all broken down. I'm just going to go in order, starting with the skeletal system. First question on it is how many bones are in the body? We learned in class that there are 206 bones on average in the adult human body. Keep in mind that kids have more bones. When we're born, we could say that there's over 300 bones. We don't lose them, they just fuse together. So as we grow, our bones come together, they grow together, and that's what reduces that number from over 300 bones down to the 206 bones that we have on average as an adult. Hopefully you're able to list the bones that we learned about in Note 7. Note 7 is this page that's going to be up here on the board. It's got all the different bones that we learned. We added a couple extras. For example, we added the pelvis to that. But for the most part, if you have Note 7, this is what it looks like. If you want to practice diagrams, you could always go to Google and just type in blank skeletal diagram, and there's hundreds of them. I'll try and make some available for you on my website that I'm basically recreating for you. But if you have Note 7, if you have this page, study it. We did a skeletal quiz where you had to label the bones anyways. So if you have that skeletal quiz, you can always go back and reference that. I think we took 2 skeletal quizzes. You can see if you missed any of those questions. And if you did, learn the ones that you missed. If you got them all right, then that's fantastic. Then you're right on par. The third bullet down, it says, what's the largest bone in the body? Well, we went over that several times in class. The largest bone in the body looks like this. It's the humerus. It's also known as the thigh bone. That's the largest bone in the entire body. The largest bone in the upper body, hopefully you remember, is this bone, which would be the humerus, tying into the upper arm bone. So those are 2 long bones in the body, the femur being the largest bone of the body. It says what material, what protective material covers the ends of bones in joints? Well, I'm just going to review real quick what makes up a bone. We looked at bones. We did a worksheet that covers this. Bones themselves are organs, and they're very complex. The hardest part of the bone is the outer covering, also known as the periosteum. The inside of the bone on most of the long bones is hollow. That's where we're going to find that bone marrow, which is going to be responsible for producing some of our blood cells. The protective material that's on the outside of bones at the ends, which is what the question is asking, is cartilage. Cartilage lines all of the joints in our body. That's what gives our ability to move our joints for our entire life. It kind of provides almost a frictionless surface for the bones to move over one another. And in places like our knees, our hips, we also have thick pillows of cartilage which act almost like a shock absorber. That goes to the next question. 5 types of joints in the body. 5 types of joints in the body that we need to know kind of go along with this page that's in your textbook. Hopefully you brought your textbook home to take a look at. There's 4 movable joints in the body. The 4 movable joints in the body are most noticeably that we need to know in the shoulder and in the hip, a ball and socket joint. That ball and socket joint provides a very wide range of movement in our hips. It provides a tremendous amount of support. If we look at the ball and socket joint on the end of the femur, we can see that ball. It's really important. It fits right into the socket in the hips. They come together and they just lock in. You get a really, really solid foundation that's going to hold all of our body weight on our hips, and it also provides a tremendous range of motion for our body. So we've got that ball and socket in our shoulder and our hips. In our elbows, using that larger bone in the upper body, which is the humerus, and then the bone underneath it. Maybe you remember this one, it has a little U curvature in it. That's the ulna. Those two bones come together and they form what's called a hinge joint. You can think of a hinge being on the doorway. Every door has a hinge that allows it to open and close. So we have that in our elbow, between those bones, and we also have it in our knee. You can kind of see it here with the femur and the bone underneath it being the tibia. And those bones just kind of open and close on that like a doorway does, and those are our hinge joints. Another joint we have in our body is the pivot joint. You can see that it's found at the base of the cranium. That pivot joint is just like pivoting in basketball. If you plant a foot and kind of revolve around that. We have that. That occurs at the base of our cranium. We have very important bones there. The first two vertebrae, which are called the atlas and the axis, one of them pivots on the other one. And then finally we have the gliding joint. If you look at the gliding joint, we've got that in the wrist. The gliding joint's in the ankle. That's where the tiny little bones of the wrist, hopefully you remember the names of those bones in the wrist called carpals. All those bones are able to glide over one another, and that's what gives us that very wide range of motion there. The next question down is asking for a type of connective tissue that's more flexible than bone. We have three types of connective tissue in our body. The three connective tissues are cartilage, which is the answer to this question. It's much more flexible. Cartilage makes up the tip of our nose, it makes up our ears. As I've already mentioned, cartilage is in all the joints of our body that give us that frictionless surface for bones to move over one another. And don't forget, cartilage is also really important in our chest. We've got our sternum, which is our breastbone, and we've got all the ribs. In between that, we have cartilage, and that's what this model is representing. This stuff here is cartilage. Because it's so flexible, every time we breathe in and we breathe out, or exhale and inhale, our ribs expand and contract with the movement of air into and out of our lungs. What accommodates that movement is the cartilage that's between our sternum and our ribs, and that accommodates that movement. Otherwise, if we didn't have cartilage in our chest, every time we breathed in and our lungs inflated, it would feel like someone was sitting on our chest. So that's one type of connective tissue. The second type of connective tissue holds bone to bone, and that's called a ligament. Ligaments hold bone to bone. They're really important. They can be damaged, okay, but they're like really, really strong rubber bands holding the bones in location, and that's what gives us the shape of our body. The third connective tissue that we need to know about is called a tendon. And tendons are the connective tissue that holds the muscles to our bones. So those three types of connective tissues you need to know. Moving down to the muscular system, which is the second section of this review sheet, it's going to ask some questions about those. The first one is, what are the different types of muscles? Well, we learned several different types of muscles. There's three of them found in the body. If I just advance here through this. The muscular system is predominantly made of skeletal muscle. Those are the kinds of muscles we see on the diagram there. We've got over 600 skeletal muscles in our body. I'll get to why in a moment. So that's the largest group of muscles. The second group of muscles we have in our body would be made up of smooth muscle, and smooth muscle makes up our digestive system. That's not nearly as fast reacting as our skeletal muscle, and for the most part it's involuntary. We have no control over it. The third muscle that's found in our body, the third muscle group, is cardiac muscle, and we only have that one place, and cardiac muscle is found in the heart. So we have three muscle groups: skeletal muscle, smooth muscle, and cardiac muscle. It asks what holds muscle to bone. I've already covered that with you, but muscles are attached to bones by ligaments, or excuse me, by tendons. I apologize. Tendons are going to be holding those muscles to the bones, anchoring them, and then when those muscles contract, that's what's going to move our skeleton around. The third question down in the muscular system asks, what type of muscle never tires? That's mainly talking about the cardiac muscle. Okay, we know that skeletal muscle tires. The skeletal muscle representing here on this model, you can see all the different muscles that are found in the arm. They're all skeletal muscles. They get tired. The more you work, the more tired they get. And then we have to take a break. Our digestive system, those muscles that make up our digestive system, that smooth muscle, like the esophagus and the stomach, small intestine, large intestine, they don't really get tired. Our digestive system, although it works hard, it doesn't physically work hard. The muscle that it's referring to never getting tired is this one, our cardiac muscle. You know, this thing works day in and day out. It's beating all the time. It doesn't stop. It doesn't take a break. Hopefully it doesn't take a break for a very long time in our life, and it's able to get us through, 100 years of living. The next question it says is, name different muscles. We really don't need to name different muscles. There's only two muscles we really have to worry about that we learned, and they were the tricep and bicep, which is being represented by this model here. Even though it's not on the review sheet, it's good to know. We covered why there's so many muscles in the body, skeletal muscles, and it's because muscles have to work in pairs. Remember, muscles can only do one thing. They can only contract, and when they're not contracting, they're relaxing. That's what allows every movement in our body. So, for example, here we've got our bicep and our tricep, just to review how they work. Whenever our arm moves, if we want to move the thumb to the shoulder, one muscle has to pull, but in order for a muscle to pull, the other muscle has to relax. So when that thumb goes to the shoulder, that bicep is going to contract, which we can see there, it got smaller. And that tricep on the bottom relaxes to allow that movement to occur, to allow the thumb to straighten out. The opposite's going to happen. In this case, the tricep is going to contract, which is pulling, and that bicep on top is going to relax to allow that movement to occur. Every movement in our body requires at least two muscles, and because of that, we have so many muscles. That's the reason why we have so many muscles. If you think of all the complex movements our body is capable of doing, it takes at least two muscles for every movement, whether it's just moving a finger, or moving the entire hand, or straightening the arm. We've got a lot of muscles for all of those reasons. So hopefully this wasn't a miserable attempt at trying to review with you. We are going to have to know that information about the skeletal and muscular system. And I'll be back to review other systems as we go along. So come back and reference this as much as you need. And if you have any questions about this, please email me. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.